Here we go. Hello, Servus Grüß euch. Welcome back to the podcast. He has a bird. I am your host, Sean Shelton, and here with me is the pichler Max, which means only one thing. It is time for an episode of Been Watching. Max, thanks for coming.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Of course. I will be talking quieter than usual because it is a late night edition. So try not to wake up your pregnant wife is fully on for me. But it is going to be difficult for me not to raise my voice because, Max, I forgot how angry this show made me when I watched it the first time. I watched it the first time about 4 years ago, and I had forgotten a lot of things that had happened. I remember the main things, but some things I forgot that I got angry. Was my a lot of emotions, but anger is one. Yeah. So I want to review it, but I'm going to do it in a little bit different order. I think it could be a little bit confusing or not have the same impact because they actually don't go in chronological order in the show. So I want to do it by chronological order because I think it adds to the absurdity, and I wish they would have done that. What are your initial reactions from the show?
Yeah, I was just like really confused, like not in an entertained way, which I was when I saw Tiger King, but I was really irritated and it was some kind of mixture between feeling sorry for the people involved and also kind of judging them for being fucking stupid.
Absolutely. I feel bad for the girls. I don't feel bad for the parents.
No.
So it starts with the introduction. What's funny is I want to say Jan. I've been in Central Europe for so long that I want to say the little girl's name is Jan. It's Jan. So the series starts with the introduction of Jan, and she's apparently a lovely little girl, full of energy and charisma and very personable. And then shortly after that is the introduction of Robert B. Berchtold, which we have Schreibvogel and Berchtold now as the main antagonists of our last two documentaries. So when they say they really Europe sent all of its outcasts, yeah, exactly, to America, maybe it's true. He was very, very funny and personable and got along with the family almost immediately, which is not uncommon for a manipulative person. So the family, and this is where I'm going to start going in chronological order, unlike the show. The families got really close. Then the parents noticed that we're going to say Bob is the dad and B is Robert Berchtold. So his nickname was B. The parents noticed very early on he had a thing for Jan, which is boop, red flag, right? Like immediate, hey, this grown-ass man is obviously infatuated with my daughter. Like most people would cut ties there. But no, not these people. But you find out later that two families did. Like the guy, I thought it was so funny when they interviewed the guy talking about the boating outing. He was like, yeah, after one time on a boat with B, I realized I never want to be around that man ever again. So
but it didn't get into detail. Like I would have wanted to know what happened on that boat.
I think it was just a feeling that he had because he probably watched this man interact with a 12-year-old and go, what the fuck? Like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
So you find out that families have like realized his sexual preference being young and they cut ties off with him. And then you also find out during this time that they had a sleepover at their house and that Jan woke up in the middle of the night next to Robert with her panties at her ankles. But for her, it wasn't plausible that B would be trying to harm her. But I feel like 11 is, I think she was 11 at the time. 11's old enough to realize like, hey, this isn't normal. Maybe I should tell my parents. but maybe they just trusted him so much.
Yeah, I think like they painted this picture that he had like their complete trust. Like
I had to have.
they told him secrets. He had been in their house like every day,
Said
and
every night, every single night. So the parents obviously didn't know that story, but then you knew it was like, okay, things aren't going well. And obviously, this is in trying to illuminate in chronological order. Then there was a story that B called Marianne, Marianne is the mother of Jan. He called her at work and said, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to make lunch. Can you bring me a sandwich?" The balls on this man to call somebody else's wife to make him a sandwich. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Could you
and,
imagine?
and like that pickup actually worked out. God
Yeah.
damn it.
Yeah. So he said, "Hey, woman, come bring me a sandwich. I'm hungry." And then he's like, "Hey, you look good and you got nice legs." And then they ended up on a camping trip with the church, which, by the way, I don't know if it's very popular in Europe or well known. The
Mormon.
LDS church is the Church of Latter-day Saints, and it's Mormon. They're Mormon. So they're idealistic people and really obviously think the best in people. And so it's a perfect community for a manipulative person to kind of thrive on, especially in the 70s. So they hook up on a camping trip. They make out. B and Marianne make out. He feels her boobies. And then it jumps right to a story where he's on a car ride with the dad, Bob, talking about how he's sexually frustrated. And then, Max, I shit you not, the first time I heard that this man convinced Bob to give him a hand job, I shut the TV off.
Really?
I was
Like,
so blown away. Like, what crosses his argument was, hey, Bob, this is some kid shit. This is some kid stuff.
yeah. Like that was the first time because like you said, they don't put it in a chronological order.
Right.
Like we already knew about cruel
Yeah.
stuff that
It's
happened
a
later
I mean,
on.
it's a review, so hopefully they've
But then
watched it. You already know he kidnapped the daughter. But this is
yeah, but then
everything that happened before.
yeah, because I already knew what happened afterwards
Right.
and like how I put together the pieces on how they ignored pretty much every red flag possible and they were easily being manipulated. It didn't surprise me that much. Like
But
he he seemed like a guy you can sell anything like,
yeah, but how do you
but
sell that?
still
Max, I don't know. I don't know how it is being a teenager in T-roll, but we didn't just jerk each other off.
no.
That's not just kid shit. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what kind of argument is that? It's like no, that's
Seems to be good enough argument.
ah. And then like so again, this is pre first kidnapping. So we're not even at the worst things yet. And we already have him waking up next to the daughter with she has no panties on, him seducing the wife and the dad, the wife and the dad. Then you find out that he was being treated for as a pedophile. They knew this. He was getting help from the church. And part of his therapy was he asked B asked Bob if he could sleep in Jan's bed with Jan. Once Jan go to bed, I can go in there and lay with her. It's part of my therapy. And again, this is after the hand job. This is after the hookup. This is after the panty incident. This is after them finding out that he's a pedophile. He likes young women. And it's like, well, if it's a part of his therapy, the doctor prescribed it. Bling, bling, bling. Max, he slept in her bed 4 times a week for 6 months.
That really messed me up when the screen showed it. That was crazy.
That's so many
Like,
times. And you find out that he's controlling her medication. So he's just slipping her, like he's giving her allergy medication that's actually sleeping meds. So he's just drugging her and then molesting her. And the parents are like, well, I don't know how I didn't see these red flags.
and like, wasn't there like one point where he actually told the parents that she's acting like uh, crazy, or like there's something not normal, like she was whipping in a chair or something like that.
Yeah,
So
I think
he
that
kind
was
of made excuses if she would have acted differently,
right. Right,
so
right.
that they won't suspect him.
Well, the crazy thing is, too, before all this, I actually skipped it or I actually had it out of order. When all this obsession was starting, Jan and her sister shared a bedroom. And the man literally went in and built a wall in the bedroom and made one big bedroom, two separate rooms. So, like, okay, he's obsessed with my daughter. He just built a room for her so she could be by herself. Um, he hooked up with my wife. He made me give him a hand job, um, or convinced me to. Um, and now we found out he's a pedophile, and now he's sleeping in the room 4 times a week for 6 months, the room that he built for my daughter to be alone. Red flags everywhere. Nope, wasn't enough. Wasn't enough. He was just the whole time he was just biding time until she turned 12. And he must have had this planned out very elaborately because at 12, you can get married in Mexico, which is baffling. 12 years old, that's so young. How can you get married at 12? How can you give consent at 12?
I don't I'm at loss for words.
Yeah. So, anyways, he gets her to go to horseback riding. He breaks through the thing, or he sets up the scene that where he got try to make it look like he got kidnapped. And then, what did you think of the alien routine? Like that had to be so elaborate to pre-record these messages.
That
And
when that part came on, I was thinking the same thing you just said. Like, this must have been a really elaborate plan. Like,
yeah,
because like every detail, he must have pre-recorded these messages. He must have come up with the storyline. He would have made a brilliant author probably.
I mean the
But
fact that she was half alien and had to continue the species or whatever, and he was the person like I couldn't. I mean, the mind that you have to do to be able to make that just to manipulate a 12-year-old into having sex with you. I think about that mindset. It was very, very, it was poorly executed, but very, very elaborate.
and
And
sadly, it worked out.
it did. It did. And the craziest thing about this, so your daughter is being um, kidnapped, right? Driven to Mexico, drugged, convinced she's an alien, convinced she needs to have sex with B to save this alien race.
And you can't
And
have contact with her dad anymore.
well, before even that, they didn't call the police for 2 days. He kidnapped her on a Thursday and they called the police on a Sunday. Are you shitting me? You mean the convicted pedophile that you know of, the guy who manipulated you and your husband to cheat on each other with him, and the guy that you know has been obsessed with your daughter, the pedophile that has been obsessed with your daughter, and you don't call the police for 2 fucking days?
And even the first time they tried to call, and this hit different when they said that the FBI was closed during weekends. Like, what the fuck
But it,
is wrong? And then
but then she got an emergency number to call and was
yeah,
like, "Oh, I don't want to make a fuss. Your daughter's being drugged and molested." So, anyways, then we meet Pete Walsh, the FBI agent, who's my favorite character in this entire thing. Um, like, yeah, it was a poorly executed plan. They obviously knew he wasn't kidnapped. They knew he kidnapped her. They got married in Mexico. Obviously, the USA doesn't accept weddings from 12-year-olds. So to get back in the country, he would need parental permission, and then you meet Joe, his brother, and Joe had an all-time quote, if I can find it. He said something like, "Yeah, I always knew B was a," or I think he called him Robert. I think I always knew Robert was a sexual pervert, just what he was into. Oh, all right, Joe. Okay, good to know. Good to know. So, anyways, they Joe informs on his brother. They find him. They bring him back. He's going to get sentenced for kidnapping, child molestation, these other charges. And the parents of Jan decide to drop charges
But you got to tell why.
because they were going to tell everybody that the dad gave him a handy. So they care more about his reputation, which I'm sure would have been destroyed. But they would rather him have a good reputation and the pedophile that kidnapped your daughter roam free than him go to jail for a very long time and you have to move. You know what I mean? Like, are you kidding me? That was the second thing that pissed me off the most. So the first thing was not calling the police immediately. This was number two. Yeah, so they drop all charges. He goes to jail for like 10 days total because the federal government has no case without its lead witnesses. They cared more about their reputation than protecting their child. And so, okay, now it's a new chapter, right? That's post kidnap number one, which is just a crazy thing to say when you have to number the kidnappings in a documentary. So B continued to manipulate the mom. And this was the third thing that I was like tensing up watching it again this afternoon. The mom has an affair with the man who kidnapped, drugged, raped, and married her 12-year-old daughter.
After she got to know all about it.
After this all thing happened.
This was just crazy. I
She
couldn't believe that.
she had sex with the guy who had sex with her 12-year-old.
And she even said it was a, like, what did she call it? Like a interesting time or something like that.
Yeah, because he made her feel good. Because I don't know, it doesn't seem like Bob was much of a charmer. But like she knew everything that happened. Maybe not the rape because the doctor said everything was still intact, but
But still,
regardless.
you need to also tell that when they left Mexico and went back to the States, he had a plan prepared. He told Jan
Oh yeah,
that
exactly.
she can't tell anything about this
Yeah,
whole trip,
right.
and she needs to insist that it was a vacation, and they did like parasailing and stuff,
Exactly.
and she kept her mouth shut. She didn't say anything, and every time
Well, he
somebody
threatened
would
to
have suspected.
he threatened to kill her. He threatened to kill her dad, like the aliens, but he threatened to kill her. He threatened to kill her dad, and they would use her middle sister instead, and her youngest sister would go blind. So she didn't have a lot of options.
And she kind of protected him, like she was his kind of alibi, because she, every time somebody assumed that something happened, she shut it down
She
immediately.
she fought for him. She was all in on the mission. She was all in. Yeah. So Marianne has an affair with B, the man who married her 12-year-old, and the the one this made me happy because I was steaming just hearing Marianne talk. And when Bob filed for divorce, that was the smartest thing he did the entire documentary. Because the plan, I think the plan was for B was to take Marianne, which brings the kids, because the mom always gets the kids. So if he could convince Marianne to leave Bob, that brings the kids, and now Bob's out of the way. and now he's Jan's dad, and he would have unfeathered access. So that was the smartest thing he did. And Marianne went to a lawyer, and the lawyer said, cut out the cancer. This man's a cancer. And then she finally did. So to recap, it took open infatuation with the daughter, being known as a pedophile, having an affair with her, knowing he manipulated your husband into giving a hand job, kidnapping your daughter, marrying your daughter in Mexico,
And threatening to kill her.
and threatening to kill her. So it took all those things to realize, like, oh man, yeah, this guy's bad news. Okay. But to give her credit afterwards, she threatened to kill him.
Yeah.
And the one thing I found out after doing research after the show is what they cut out. Apparently, she held B at gunpoint. She met him. It wasn't in the documentary, but apparently they recorded it, but they cut it out of the show. Apparently, she showed up with her brother. She wasn't kidding, and she had a gun and held him at gunpoint. And like, hey, if you don't leave us alone, I'll kill you. So good for Marianne. She finally had it, but fuck, man, it took a lot for that to happen. And the crazy thing about that whole scenario, when B and Marianne were talking back and forth about Jan, because he even said Jan was like selling her body for money and stuff, which was
Yeah,
completely
because
a lie.
she was actually with him. Now, you jumped a little bit in front because that was the second kidnapping.
Oh, that's right. That's right. No, you're right. You're right. This is when she goes to Jackson Hole. The mom sends the daughter. Oh, yeah. So I skipped a big part. So B is calling Marianne after this whole manipulative thing and telling her that, you know, Jan's gonna come see him no matter what. You might as well just send her. And Jan's going, I need to see this guy. He's my future husband. So the mom, after the kidnapping, sends Jan to B where he's working in Jackson Hole, and they stay together for 2 weeks. Then when she comes back, everything hits the fan. And then, yeah, and then he kidnaps her again. So Jan disappears again, and then these phone calls happen. You're right. You're right. And then these phone calls happen.
She was actually with him, but he kept insisting that he didn't see her for like months.
Exactly. And he was saying that, like, hey, have you heard from her? No, I haven't heard from her. But, she said, I asked her how she's earning money, and she said, hard. I'm selling drugs and I'm prostituting. But the whole time she was with him. And then he ends up enrolling her into a Catholic school and telling the nuns that he's a CIA agent and he just got out of Lebanon or something and changed her
Yeah,
name. So this whole time I'm sitting there like, how is she still talking to this man? Like, how do they still have a relationship, Marianne and B?
at
But
this point,
she's,
at
huh?
this point, they even writing love letters on a daily basis. He paid children from school to give her the letters. Like he ran up to random children and said, "Hey, you." That's they didn't mention it how he did it, but
Yeah,
I imagine
it
he
had to
like,
be.
"Hey, you can have this ice cream if you give this to Jen."
Because once she got into school, he knew he was being watched because he was in a different city, but he would visit on weekends or so. And then my guy, Pete Welsh, finally realizes what was happening, checks the phone book. So funny. So this man goes to a phone booth, turns open the page to the phone number of the
Writes a number on it.
yeah, of the school, writes a number down, and then leaves it open. And he knows he's being watched. So, anyways, they find her at the school. They arrest him. Jan goes back home. But the problem is she's getting older and older, right? And the mission that she was on, she had to give birth to the next alien baby by 16. So she's stressing out, right? Could you imagine the amount of pressure that child was under? Like, think about that. If I don't have sex with this man and get pregnant by 16, my dad's gonna die, I'm gonna die, my sister's gonna get abducted, and my baby sister is
It's
gonna
gonna
go
get blind,
blind.
and my home planet is dying.
Like the amount of pressure that girl was under. So she's obviously freaking out. And I thought the story that was the saddest for this girl, like Jan, I feel awful for her. Her life was completely altered by this fucking guy. The fact, so much so that she went to a camp at BYU, surrounded by all other Mormon kids. A kid liked her and bought her an ice cream, if I remember. And coincidentally, Marianne called her and said the dogs were sick. And she thought that was because she was failing the mission. So the aliens made her dog sick. Like, imagine that mindset you were under as a 14, 15-year-old, where you think the simple gesture of getting ice cream bought for you is going to kill your dogs.
Yeah, I think this it's just different times. Like back then, people don't didn't have internet or phones,
Yeah,
maybe not even cable. Like uneducated, not
absolutely.
not
No,
in a
you
way.
you don't have the resources that you have now. But I mean, come on. So, anyways, the one note that I had while Jan was out during the second kidnapping that was pretty interesting to me. Two things. The second kidnapping, fucking Bob and Mary Ann didn't call the police for 2 weeks. 2 weeks they don't call the FBI. Are you shitting me? I mean, this poor FBI agent, how the fuck is he supposed to build a case with these two incompetent? Anyways, and then during these conversations that him and Marianne and B were having, what was interesting to me is that he called Jan a kid. He's like, he literally said, I think the quote was, I haven't talked to the kid since July 1st. But that was pretty interesting to me. I didn't realize that pedophiles still viewed them as kids. Like, I, that's the love of his life. I don't know. It surprised me. I thought he would, I don't know, not view her as a kid. Does that make sense?
Don't you think it may have been part of his charade? Like
It
he was pretty careful in laying out the plans. Like
could be.
he he thought pretty much ahead. Like
But I think he meant the kid. I think he did. Because when she was caught and he was arrested and, he was going through the criminal process, they seemed like it, even the sister said like it seemed like B had less of an interest in Jan because she was 15. She was starting to become 16. Like she's starting to become less of a child and more of a young woman, which probably isn't as attractive for him anymore. So using the word kid probably wasn't um, calculated. Maybe it's just why would he view them as an adult? He's attracted to kids. It just was a weird moment for me listening to it. It's like, yeah. And then the next sentence, he said, Marianne asked him if he wanted to marry her still. And he goes, oh, Jan's the only one for me. But for a 3-year window until she hits puberty and starts getting boobs, then it would be really strange. I just, isn't that, I couldn't imagine. So he gets arrested from jail. He pays 2 people to burn Robert's plant store down. That made me laugh, actually. It's like, what a vindictive move.
what's vindictive? I don't know the word.
He was like, so it wasn't calculated, right? It was just like he was pissed, so he burnt the house, burnt the store down. But like he didn't solve anything, it wasn't. It
But
wasn't.
just
It didn't progress his plan at all. You know. So I thought that was funny. Just a side note. Um, but it was a pretty galvanizing moment in the family because Robert ended up not caring that much and just hugged his family and said, "This is the only thing I need now." And I think it brought Jan back closer to him.
I also think that, yeah, because pretty soon afterwards, she started questioning her beliefs, like the beliefs he put into her,
Mm-hmm.
even though it took a while longer.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a turning point
I think
in
so
some.
too, because even after that dog story with her at BYU, the next morning, Marianne said, "Hey, just wanted you to know that the dogs they're fine. You know, like no need to be upset." And that was like one of her first moments of like, "Hey, maybe this isn't real. You know, maybe getting bought an ice cream from another kid isn't going to kill my entire family." So then stuff like that happened and happened and happened. And she started questioning it, questioning it, questioning it. And then one of the saddest things I think of the whole show is on her 16th birthday, she legitimately planned on killing herself and her sister, like trying to convince her sister to do the mission, her younger sister, because she still had more time until she was 16. And then if it didn't work, then she would kill her and her sister. Unbelievable. Could you imagine the amount of stress? I mean, that's a real conversation she had with herself. Couldn't imagine. Couldn't imagine. She ends up not doing it. And then that was like the breaking point is when she was 16 years old and one day she realized it was all fake.
Can you imagine how frustrating and also levitating that is? Like that mixed bag of emotions that
The
you would
emo
just probably faint.
I the, yeah, the emotions you would go through of being thank God it's not real, but also the last 5 years of my life were a complete fraud. And realizing that your life will never ever be the same because you just got manipulated and molested and had your family torn apart for the last 5 years for literally nothing. Because she always thought there was this higher reason, right? And then she realized it's absolutely nothing. I don't know how she's a functioning adult.
That's an interesting point you're making right now, because to jump a little bit ahead,
Mm-hmm.
later when she's in front of the court, they ask her um, if she's about to make a movie about it. And in that moment, I thought like, I think she really is considering it. And then I thought like, they already sold a book of it. Now they're doing a movie. How how broken can you really be? Like, did it really mess with you that much? Or because if something like that would happen to me, I wouldn't take the opportunity to make a movie, because
Which,
that, I think it's kind of betraying yourself. Because
well, I think you have to consider the timeline too. So all this happened in the mid 70s. And they said the book, Marianne didn't start writing the book until mid
1990.
90s. Yeah. And then she finished it in 2003. So you're looking at 26 years to try to figure this out. I mean, so at that time, she would have been 50, a 50-year-old woman. So if this, no, no, 40, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's a 40-year-old woman at this time. And if your life is affected from 16 to 40 to the fact that you have a tough time talking about it, like imagine just the years and years and years of counseling. And I think the the middle sister said something really powerful, and Jan said something really powerful. The thing that the sister said that I thought was really powerful, she was quoted saying, I think the hardest thing is for my parents is, they allowed this to happen. So
which
even,
is true.
it's 100% true. So even the sister identifies like, yeah, this is on you guys. And even the dad said like, I'm her dad. I'm supposed to protect her. And I let this guy sleep with her 4 times for 6 months. Like the amount of guilt that the parents felt. I mean, could you, especially the dad. I mean, the mom too, because the mom is probably even more guilty than the dad. But the thing that Jan said that was super powerful, I think, at the end was, I learned how to forgive or move through the situation by helping my parents forgive themselves.
That was good, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I just couldn't imagine the aftermath of that whole scenario and trying to navigate your family through this half a decade of trauma. I mean, while Jan was in the school, she called the family and just checked in, and just to hear the sister's voice who picked up the phone, like how traumatic it is for the sister and how emotional they are the entire time after 30 no, when this was shot, it was 40 years after. I don't know when it was shot, but it was released to like mid 2000s. And but I didn't feel bad for any adult in this scenario. I just felt bad for the kids, those parents. How gullible, how manipulative, or how easily manipulated can you be? Yeah, it's the craziest documentary I've ever seen, but not like you said, it doesn't make you feel good or even laugh at these people. They're not cartoons, they're just gullible, ignorant, stupid people, to be honest. So, like you mentioned, they go to court because she released a book and she was putting it on tour, and this guy, B, shows up at the tour dates. And he like tries to ruin it basically and says it's all lies. And I think he was even quoted as saying that the parents gave him access to Jan in return for sexual favors. Which,
But by the time I heard that, I was like, with all the fucked up stuff that happened throughout the story, like if it would have if it would had another aspect to it, like I could have imagined that something like this could have happened at some time, like because sure, I'm in no way trying to protect the man or something like that, but
mm-hmm.
I feel like maybe it wasn't as one-sided as it seemed, because like with all the fucked up stuff that they let happen, maybe there has been something else as well.
Yeah, maybe so. And that's what I was trying to find. But the only thing that you really find is, first of all, his second charge, he got charged with kidnapping and impersonating a federal agent. Because of the weak testimony from Bob and Marianne, he gets, I think,
45
one.
days.
Yeah, he got charged to 6 months in a mental institution, I believe. And then he
was
ended up,
was released after 45 days.
yeah, and then he was able to leave after 45 days. And so fast forward into this court date, there was a pretty emotional court date, and he was basically calling her a liar, and she stood up for herself, and the judge actually gave him a restraining order for the rest of his life, which is apparently very uncommon. But nevertheless, he kept showing up to these things. And one of the cool things that I don't think people see a lot is the biker gang was there. It was the Bikers Against Child Abuse, BOCA,
Yeah.
or BACA, or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
And I've seen not that specific biker gang, but there's a lot of biker gangs that are
Yeah, the
for
BAAA, Bikers Against Animal Abuse.
exact.
A
There's a
little
lot
different
there's a
from
lot
a
of
different
biker
documentary.
right, but there's a lot of biker gangs that are very social and like what's the word, philanthropists. And so they showed up to her next book rally and were protecting her. And never, of course, B shows up and one of the bikers attacks his car, and then he ends up speeding up
Running
the
him
car
over.
and braking, yeah, and hurting him. And then, of course, they find a weapon in his car, which is a break of parole because he's a multi-time criminal. And then instead of going back to jail, he kills himself.
Poisoned himself.
You know? But wasn't it like a perfect ending to the documentary to see how the brother said it?
Yeah, like with no emotions, just stating the fact that, yeah, he didn't want to go to prison, so he killed himself.
Yeah. It was just like that, like just so
Period.
cold. It was like, yeah, he took a bunch of his heart medication with Kahlua and some milk, and yeah, he killed himself. It's like, okay, Joe, uh, that's your brother, but it's the perfect ending to the show. Like, just somebody who was so manipulative and took advantage of so many people that his own brother was emotionless towards his suicide. I mean, it was like that. I think that's the perfect wrapping of like this was the type of person that Robert Berchtold was. But yeah, it's not a documentary you really feel good afterwards.
No, but I think it's also something you should you should see, because it kind of opens your eyes towards, like, maybe really predators hidden in plain sight, like the show suggests, like
Yeah, like
double
pay
check,
pay
double
attention
check.
to pay attention to red flags too. Like that's like when they were interviewing the dad, he's like, yeah, looking back, I had no idea how we didn't see these red flags. It's like, no, you saw them, you just ignored them. Like one in the first 5 minutes, you guys said that after meeting him, you noticed a weird obsession with Chan.
Jan.
Choose. Yeah, with Jan. Choose. See ya. You have a weird thing for my daughter. I don't care if you're a nice guy. See ya.
Like, but just like you said, those people must have been dumb. Like, really. Like, one quote right at the beginning of it was, I didn't realize it until the end, because it was kind of introduction, when Bob the dad said, like, B got them a gift basket with fruits, and when then he wrote something like, um, "You're a nice family. It's a pleasure being around you."
Mm-hmm.
And then he called that move a smart move. Like, what a smart man, or something like that.
Pretty sharp, he said. This
Yeah,
guy's
pretty sharp.
sharp. Yeah.
Like, why?
They saw it. They knew it. They just ignored it. But yes, one of the craziest documentaries I've ever seen. It's a story that even watching it for the second time, I'm sitting there like, are you fucking kidding me? And these are the type of documentaries we're looking for on this segment. And so um, I hope you guys enjoyed the documentary. I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Let us know. Leave your comments. And we're going to keep finding good ones for you guys to watch, and hopefully keep distracting everybody from this weird and crazy time that we live in.
One thing though, predators do have a harder time right now because of the
That's
quarantine.
true. That's true. Quarantine makes it tough for kidnapping and traveling to foreign countries to marry minors. See? Always see. That's why I keep you around, Max. You always see the positives in bad situations.
I try.
All right, Max. Thanks again. And yeah, we're going to keep finding the most intriguing documentaries that we can find and keep reviewing them for you guys. So let us know what you think. And yeah, stay safe. Max, take care.